Marhaba and welcome to the Habibis, three game developers drinking good Arab tea. I am your host for today, Fauzi Mesmar.
And I'm Osama Dorius. And I think that's it for this week as well, right?
We're
For
not doing the I am Rami Ismail. We're
That's
not
not what
doing.
he sounds like, though. He's more of a, oh, Robbie Ismail. Is that closer?
Astaghfirullah, ya Habibis. That was a terrible impression. So yeah, I wasn't here for this episode for the recording. I was preoccupied, and thanks so much for Osama and Fauzi picking it up, doing the episode. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting one. The benefit I have is that I'm the editor. So as I'm sitting here and going through the recording, I thought, why not be a little part of this episode after all, and just do some editor's notes. So I'm excited to hear where this goes. Hope it'll be a interesting and diverse discussion about lots of interesting topics. And yeah, let's go. But yeah, that was a really bad impression.
I am terrible at impersonations.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that I've been doing well. I've been flying airplanes and just been having a really good time. I've been playing lots of Destiny. Had my first chance at the new raid, and it's just very good stuff. I didn't get really far, only beat the first encounter, but it's just Bungie is so good at what they do, and I'm pretty sure that Osama and Fauzi aren't gonna say or acknowledge that. Been playing a bit of Elden Ring. It's very good. The UI UX is not great, but I don't feel like getting dragged on Twitter again. So let's leave it at that. I'm gonna hop off because I have. And I don't know how long this episode is, but I have quite a bit of this podcast to edit left. I'll hand you back your podcast, Fauzi. Osama, take it away.
We thought we'd go the other end instead of like really high pitch. We go really low pitch for Rami. Because when I'm not there, I'm Fauzi Mesmar and I'm not around.
That's just my default. That's not my voice, by the way. I think with the many attempts at the end of the episode, though, one of them sounded like you, right?
Yeah,
Well, you're not a good judge of that. We don't know what we sound like.
I think most of them do. Luckily, I hear myself on a podcast way more than I would like.
Tell me about it. Oh, I hate hearing myself on anything. Oh.
It's so strange.
Well-
I get so cringe, man, listening to myself talking about anything.
Yeah, same. And watching myself is even worse. Like video. I don't know how
people
actors
do this every week. They like, sit there and listen to me talk. I can't
I
stand
can
it.
listen to you talk all the time, Fauzi. Non-stop.
Habibi.
If I could have you in my ear all the time, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Careful what you wish for, Osama.
Oh, no. Who's never done?
We'll have a designated Habibi earpiece that you're wearing all the time.
I love it. That's like a Horizon reference, right?
You wake up and I'm like there in your ear. Sabah al khair, Habibi. And like, oh my God.
What have I done? It's like a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Rami couldn't be here today. But,
No.
it's kind of like if we had a series of episodes in which we'll only be talking about Destiny, then you and I
Yeah.
might as well take some vacation,
Yes, that's true. But he's been playing. I'm sure he's been playing a ton of Destiny. We're not going to hear the end of it when he comes back. It's
That's
gonna be
true.
like,
That's true.
we're gonna have a six episode Destiny like series or something after
Exactly.
this.
Then when he gets back, maybe you and I should just, chill for a bit and let him do all the
Yeah.
flying and Destiny talking for a while.
Yep, I'm down for that. Let's make it happen.
We'd have spoken about Elden Ring for 3-4 episodes by then.
Oh yeah. Oh, speaking of Elden Ring, what have you been playing this week?
Wow. What else? I don't think, Osama, I don't think I can think about anything else other than Elden Ring, really.
Yeah, it's bizarre because that kind of happened to me too, and I wasn't even into it at the beginning.
Join us.
I don't. I mean, I was hoping this would happen, but it still took me by surprise because, as I mentioned on the last 3 episodes, I've tried I literally bought and played every single Souls game, including Bloodborne and what's the other one, Sekiro. And I couldn't get into any of them. and I
Yeah.
tried really hard. So I'm actually shocked that it happened. I was expecting the same outcome, but I'm kind of into it, and but it didn't happen the way I expected it to happen. Do you want
Hmm.
to hear about that?
Let's hear about that. And the thing is, like, I'm a fan of these games, and I'm still surprised about how good this game is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How did
It is
you?
really
I'll gush about it in a second, but I'm very curious to hear how you like turn things around.
so. First experience, I've spoken about it, was terrible. I died like over and over, and it was just like I don't understand. Everything kills me here.
I think like you
And
just
I
came
don't.
down the hill and you started fighting that night, right? I think I only
Yeah.
defeated that night like after 30 hours of playing the game.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm at like 12 hours now, and I tried to beat him, and I
Mm.
came very close. I came
Yeah,
very
you
close.
can.
I had
Yeah.
Yeah, I had about maybe 10% of his health was left. So even though it
Mm.
wasn't like the videos that you see where there's a sliver and he killed me, that was the closest I came. And I've tried a number of times recently in the last couple of hours that I've played, and that was the closest I came. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna come back to this later. I'm very close. I tried beating the first boss
Mhm.
now, and I came
Which one?
less
Morgit.
close.
Morgit?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the old man with a hunch,
Yeah, yeah.
the giant old man with a hunch.
That describes like
Yeah,
maybe 35 different enemies as well.
fair, fair, but yeah, that one, more get good as they call him. Right,
Yes.
I'm getting good enough to fight him. I'm close. I'm like I got him down to about 20 or 30% of his health. As long as there's no second phase to that fight, which this is a Souls game, so I don't know, and don't tell me. But as long as there's nothing, no surprises, I think I could get him in not too long.
Nice.
Uh, but that's the thing about this game is compared to the other Souls games. The reason I fell off of the other Souls games is always the same. I hit a wall,
Hmm.
and the way to get past this wall is either to keep practicing, and get slightly better, or to go grind. Uh, both things I found completely unappealing, and
Yeah.
I gave up. And it's different bosses for each game. Like so, I've never beaten more than the first boss in any of the Souls games. That's
Hmm.
the second boss is it's either the first blocker is either the first boss or the second boss. That's it.
Yeah.
I've never seen more than any of that in any game. Here, I've played for as long as I like already. I've caught up to the number of hours I put into the next Souls game, and I haven't even beat the first boss. But I've explored so much, and there's still like I have a laundry list of things in the world right now that I want to go see and explore. Where in the other games, there's just like one thing. There's just one thing blocking me, and there's nothing else I could do.
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest difference. When people are saying this is not like other Souls games because it's more approachable, I don't think they're talking about literally anything else except the fact that it's an open world and you have options to come back later. So you don't have to like throw yourself at the same wall or go
Mm.
grind.
It
There's
is it
nothing else.
I would say that the other thing that would make it a little bit easier. So there's two things that makes it a little bit easier as well. So the one is how you grind. So if you want to grind, is that
Okay,
because of it's an open world, you can find places that will give you optimum XP for the time you want to spend on grinding.
true,
So you can
true.
travel, find an enemy that gives you a decent amount of XP, close to a bonfire. A grace. A point.
Yeah.
I still keep saying the bonfire. And then like kill a
Yes,
bunch of those and then go back, heal, fill your flasks, and do it over again until you can level up. So there's that. The
yes,
other thing that makes it much easier is that they have a mechanic called the spirit ashes,
yeah,
which is which
yeah,
I'm not
yeah, yeah,
sure
yeah.
which I'm not sure if you use. Maybe you have it actually. I know Sam. If you
I
haven't
no,
used, if you
I
haven't
have,
used
I
it
have.
yet, I might be now like really make things a lot easier for you.
No,
Is
I
that
have. I have a bunch of them. I've been using them, and that's the only reason I have a chance with the bosses because they
which ones
distract
do you
them.
use? By now, I think you probably have the wolf and the jellyfish.
I have the wolf, the jellyfish. I have two different
The two
skeletons.
skeletons. Nice.
I have a ranged skeleton and I have a spear skeleton.
Nice. Yeah, so this is a new mechanic. in which like you can summon something to help take the aggro off you, and you
Okay.
can take the boss. That really
Yeah.
helps. But I
I
don't know if
didn't
you've used
realize
that
that
in.
that was new. I've used it a lot, but I didn't realize it was new. I didn't know if the other Souls games had them. I just
Yeah.
figured maybe I didn't encounter them or something.
Well, this one has what other Souls games has, in which you can like summon another player to come in and
Yes.
help. And that could
Yes.
really help, by the way. So, like, if you feel stuck, and this is what I really like about this game, is that also if you feel stuck, you can summon another player. And right now it's in the zeitgeist. So there's a lot of players. You can
Yes.
summon another player and then come and help you out. And I've also like seen it's a really cool part of this game is that there's people that once they beat a boss, they stay there and help at least 5 or 10 other players before they move on.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like I've gone through this and I'm gonna help out and then move on, and I love that.
I love it. I love it a lot too. So honestly, I think the only reason I haven't fell off the game is because someone jumped in and helped me, not helped
Mm.
me fight a boss.
Yeah.
So basically, I was getting frustrated. I really was. But there's something really compelling about the world that I really like. I was playing Horizon before this, and I
Yeah.
was loving Horizon. I was
Mhm.
actually enjoying it big time. But Horizon was like, it's a. I was going to finish it. I had never a doubt in my mind that I was going to make it to the end. Right?
Mhm.
Elden Ring, there was like right now I don't think I'll finish it. I don't know. I'm getting far in it. I'm enjoying it. I'm gonna try
Mhm.
until but there's this frustration meter that keeps that's still there. Like so I still die in really dumb ways, and I'm like, why am I dying this way? This
Mm.
makes no sense. That kind of thing. But the world compels me to come back. I want to see more of it. There are enough fun stories and weird interactions that are happening that I want more of. So I want to come back to the world, and I think that's the difference between the other games I'm playing right now. Or actually, there are no other games. That's exactly the point. Other games I could be playing right now, and this is that there's there's this pull that I can't explain about,
Yeah.
and I've only had it recently in one other game, and that was Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Because when I played Breath of the Wild, there were parts of the map I haven't seen, and
Mhm.
I cannot not see those parts. There's
Mhm.
nothing pulling me there. There's no quest log. There's no point on the map. There's nothing like that except the fact that when there were other parts of this game that I hadn't seen and I went there, I was surprised. I was like wowed. There was something interesting just there waiting for me,
I
and
think
that is a
mechanic.
thing.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
from a mechanics point of view, like that, the inverse of traditional open world design, in which like there is no marker to tell you what you could find there, but you
Yeah.
know that there is probably something there, or
Yeah.
you're thinking at the back of your head that the designers are probably gonna reward me for my curiosity. So it
Yes.
it piques your curiosity even more than usual. So if you
Yeah.
like in like more traditional open world games, if you look at the map and then you see, for example, the southwest part of the map has two icons, then you're gonna go to those two icons, and then once you investigate them, then you're like, okay, that part of the map is over. I'm good.
Ex- Exactly.
Whereas that if there was nothing in this game, you start to think to yourself, is there something? And then you
Yeah.
go and you go there, and then indeed you will find something. And almost always, you will also find that something that's going to be really worth your while, that either really makes you stronger, really adds to the lore or the story of the game, or like just,
Mhm.
will be breathtaking in terms of the view.
Yes, absolutely. That I couldn't have said it better myself, but it's exactly that's the feeling I get across both those games. That I can't name another game that had it
Yeah.
at that level. I can't.
Except
I
Breath
think
of the
that's
Wild, really.
exactly Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. I
Yeah.
don't have it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot I also dislike about Elden Ring, a lot, and
But
that's
before
and
we
to be
jump
honest.
into before we jump into
Oh, you
that,
want to talk about the good before we go to the bad?
I
That's
still
fair.
want
That's
to I
fair.
want to spend enough time talking about how magnificent this game is, but also like I want to also add another point to the curiosity based design.
Yeah.
Um, in Breath of the Wild, what I really liked about this game is that in addition to exploring map areas, there was also like small segments of the game in which you'd be going around and you see a tree, and you say, if I climb up that tree, what would happen? Like a small
Yeah.
tree. And then you go in and you get like an item or a korok seed or something like that. Or you see 4 trees that are in an odd position, and then you add a 4th rock next to them, and then you form a shape, and then you get rewarded with a korok. It's almost like there's small nudges, not even like, to explore large areas. The design of the game drives your curiosity to even explore smaller things. To go like, if I make this jump that looks that I shouldn't be doing it, will the designer have known that I will do it? And then you make that jump, and then the designer would put something there for you. It feels like every time you're doing this curiosity expeditions, it's like the designer's on the other side giving you a high five.
Yes. I had that moment in Elden Ring as well, where I was on like a high part of the map, right? And I look down, and there's this other entire area that I know I'm not supposed to reach yet. Like, it's far, right? But I was like, no, there has to be a way for me to break this. There has to be a way for me to jump down there. But of course, jumping, you'll die. And I tried it. I actually was like, is this distance too far? Yeah, it's just too far. But there has, like, maybe that's a soft spot. And I tried a couple of times, and I died a couple of times. And then I found this jutting rock that's super tiny, like very, very, very thin surface. And it's exactly the maximum height of what I would judge I'm able to jump. And I'm like, can I make that jump? I had to like jump with the horse and not double jump and not leave from the edge. And I landed just on it. Like, really, like if it was a second more, I would have fell to my death. And then I was able to reach this new area, sequence breaking. But it's there, like, when I go back to the top and I'm like, oh, wow, there was a path between those rocks. Something pulled me towards trying this exact same spot in the design, but it was super subtle. So when I tried it, like, it felt like I was clever and I was breaking the sequence, but it's so masterfully done that I had to actually go back up to be like, why did I try? It was a long stretch of real estate and I chose this exact spot, right? It was so well done, and the game is filled with moments like that where they're just nudging you in a direction. And I was rewarded with a huge, vast area with a lot of interesting things like to explore that I don't think I would have been there. Like I backtracked and I looked for another way in there, any secrets. I couldn't find any. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are multiple ways. But little things like that, there's so many of them that I just like. I play into the wee hours of the night. I haven't played much. Like I said, 13 hours in 2 weeks sounds like a very small amount of time. And from how long I play games, like the amount of time I have, that especially now, the week before GDC, with all the prep I have to do, that's an enormous amount of time. That it really is. Like, I teach at night and I prepare classes, and I'm like, I have so many things that I'm juggling. I know you're the same, Fauzi. I know you have a similar schedule. So for me to find this much time for a game now is a lot.
It's a testament to how amazing that game is, man. And I can like, you 12 hours with all of that stuff that you have going. It's just a lot.
And most of the time it's just like, oh, okay, good. I have 30 minutes before I go to bed. I look at the time. Oh my God, it's been 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like it's that. It's just like, oh, and I have to do this thing. And you take you take mental note of all the places you want to go. Like, I'm excited to go back and push forward in a few other areas. Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't mention is the addition of a mount. Now that there's a horse, true. I can just like, this is a minor spoiler, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe, no, you know what? I'm not going to mention what kind of creature it is. Let's just suffice it to say there were really, really, really huge, dangerous looking creatures that earlier in the game, I encountered one of them, and I never wanted to go back to the area. and while exploring on horseback, I saw another one, and my instincts were to run towards it. And then I saw a field of them, and I'm here running like on my horse between these. Like, there were at least 4 of them that I could see, just casually walking around. I aggro them, and I'm because I'm on horseback, I'm able to lose them. And I
Yeah.
was able to explore this area with really scary looking creatures that if there was no horse, I would have died for sure. I wouldn't have died. I would have seen the first one and turned back around. That's
Yeah.
all. I would have been like, you know what, I'm gonna die here. There's no way I could survive this. So it's
You're right.
allowing me to see like parts of the world in advance, like almost a foreshadowing that I'm excited to get strong enough to be able to actually walk through and kill things. And that
Yeah.
feeling, by the way, of like that's not unique to this game. I won't pretend that it is, but that feeling of I'm strong enough to fight that person who really gave me a really hard time at the beginning of the game. It still feels more pronounced in this game than any
For
other game
sure.
I've played.
An amount that can double jump, I think that's pretty much unique to this game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. Actually, I can't think of another game that had that. But there, like
I know mounts
that's
that can fly, but mounts that can double jump, that's a new one.
yeah. But it works so well. It fits so well.
It's great, and I agree with you actually that mount is such a game changer because like if you find out that you're in a tricky spot outside of a dungeon or something like that, and you want to be ready to engage with this location, the game allows you to leg it. Get on the mount, get out of there, and then come back when you're ready, and that's superb. It also like allows you sometimes to cheese it. And
Yes.
with a game this difficult, I think it's legit that you cheese sometimes. Like get
Yeah,
on that
no
horse,
rules.
run behind the things, get the items that you want, and get out. That's legit. It works. If it's in the game, you're allowed to take it, and if it allows you to enjoy it all the more, then go for it.
Yeah. Can we
And
talk about how breathtaking the game is?
yeah,
Like, I don't know how they were able to have so many different biomes that look so different from each other and feel so different from each other and look all good in very, very different ways.
this game is a
shocking.
masterpiece in terms of like
It is.
sense of awe and like
Yeah.
the way they use landmark design in this game is so inspiring. Like
Yeah.
you can be placed anywhere in the open world, and then you'd look around you and you'll find at least 2 to 3 things that spike your interest, that you want to go and see what's going on. You can be dropped in a world, and then you look around you, and through some of those big monuments or points of interest, you can orient yourself.
Yeah.
Like you look at your left, like, oh, that's that big castle that I fought whatever that face in, and that's the giant glowing tree, and that's the blah blah blah. You can like just without even looking at the map, which you still use a lot, but even without it, you can still look around you and orient yourself based on those points of interest. And those points of interest, like they build intrigue in or on their own. It's not
Yeah.
like they just look awesome. They
No.
they look inviting and scary at the same time. They tell you, please come here, but also we'll probably beat you up if you come here.
There was a period in the game where the sky scared me. I was just
Yeah.
walking in a direction and the sky turned blood red.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I turned around and walked back. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know I just felt this feeling of dread. I'm like, I shouldn't be here. What have I done? And I turned around. When I finally came back to that area later, like that feeling of dread is still associated, like it's still there, right? Except I feel a little bit more powerful. But it's just that first experience I had where I'm like, oh, this place is starting to look different. It's not as green as the other place. There's more death. Oh my god, the sky's red. Okay, I'm out of here.
The game does this balance so well, in which like you always feel that you are becoming more powerful, yet you can never get too cocky. Like you feel that like with every level up, you feel the difference. You feel that these enemies that used to be scary, now they are not that scary for me in the same way, because I have grown in skill, and I also have grown in stats. These fields of like dangerous enemies that you were talking about before, later on in the games, you look at that field and you just run through because you're confident that you can take them on. But in the spirit of all the Souls games before that, you also know that even the weakest enemy could still kill you.
Yeah.
So you treat this game with respect. You know,
Yep.
like you don't just go in and mash. Like mashing is never a thing that you get used to. Sure, some enemies you start to swipe a lot more recklessly with, but if you were too reckless, the game will be very quick to remind you that this is not that kind of game. This is the game that you need to be deliberate.
Actually, speaking of the combat, I actually noticed that the input buffer is more generous than I'm used to in a
It's very
bad way,
generous.
and not in a bad way. And I don't mean it bad way as in this is a design mistake, but I mean it as a bad way as in it doesn't reward you to mash a button because then you might not want to attack anymore because you just saw an anticipation frame for like a different attack and you want to dodge, but it's too late. You press
Yeah.
that attack button twice, a second attack is going to come out now.
You gotta
So you
commit.
have to be
You can't cancel
yeah,
it.
no, you have to be extremely deliberate with your inputs. And it took me a sec to understand that. At first, I'm like, what is this input? What is happening? Because like that's not how it usually works in
Yeah.
combat games. They're much more forgiving. This is it. It feels intentional, and it
This is
feels
why
like,
people sometimes describe it as too slow.
huh?
It's this is what I think. Of course, people have different experience, but I believe that a lot of people that describe it as slow is because, you do that heavy swing. He's gonna
Yeah,
do the heavy swing, or she's gonna do the heavy swing. It's gonna be a couple of seconds. You can't
yeah,
cancel that. You can't roll out of it. You can't do anything. In most action games, even when you do the attack is not that long. And
yeah,
a lot of games allow you to cancel dodge out of it or to cancel into a move. Like there's a lot of input
exactly.
canceling in most
Yeah,
action-based games. In Souls games, nope. Like
no,
there's some moves that have input canceling that higher skill players will use, but they're
mhm,
not that many.
yeah. And it's
But
again, it's intentional, even when it's
yes,
not something you're going to stumble on accidentally. You have to
no.
know.
And another thing that maybe you'll take notice on as you get more into the combat, or maybe you've noticed already, is that the game is also very forgiving with invincibility frames
I
when
did
you're
actually notice.
when you're dodging or jumping. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I did actually notice. I actually noticed that a lot of the attacks are you have to roll into it and not the other way around
Yes,
because
exactly.
I feel like it feels initially like you should roll away from this because it's an attack, but no, you roll into it
Yes.
because you have enough vulnerability to be able to invincibility to be able to be right up in the face of the enemy now and attack it, and that like I that's not normal. Like that's not
No,
typical, is what I should say. It's not how usually you use the roll, right? It's
exactly.
almost as offensive as it is defensive, and that's bizarre. Uh, yeah, remind me about the role later when we get to the grievances. I want
Yeah,
to mention the role later.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Of
because
course,
I think it's an amazing mechanic. Like once you know how to use it.
exactly.
But
And I think that like
So yeah, I just thought I'd interrupt again. This is a lot of Elden Ring. I'm just cutting some things out and working on the flow a little. It's not really hard. I just can cut from anywhere to anywhere because the entire thing is about Elden Ring. Is this what it feels like when I talk about Destiny? Whew.
the way we're speaking about this, like invincibility frames, using the jump, the roll, the committing to an attack, and if you whiff an attack, you're gonna get punished, or if you attack and your attack is negative on block, you're gonna get punished.
yeah,
Maybe like when I reference fighting games, this is what I mean. In
yeah,
which like you're not treating it as like it's an action game, gonna mash my way through or memorize a couple of combos or anything like that. The more you know how your character moves, which is very similar to Monster Hunter, I think, as well.
yeah,
And the more you know how, but a lot more unforgiving. And the
yeah,
more you know how the enemy moves and the enemy attacks, you start to see through the game to some extent. You start to
yeah,
know, okay, so unpunishable, unpunishable, punishable. So block, dodge, dodge, attack. But don't
yeah,
attack too much. Then block, block, attach, attack, attack.
yeah,
And all of these games kind of they utilize this kind of formula. And like some other games, like they will add even additional mechanics to the Sekiro, added a lot more parrying and a lot more timing
hmm
in its combat. But the combat is still very deliberate, which is why, like,
yeah,
I think enemies seemingly become easier over time. First of all, your DPS increases because you level up. But second of all, like the more you fight these enemies and succeed, the more you know their weaknesses, know the combos that work, know the timings, and know when you're gonna get punished. So it becomes second
The
nature to you.
tells
The
the
tells
tells are the biggest
all of
part
that.
for me because when I first started fighting, like playing the game, and now I have to think back to if this was true of other Dark Souls games or other Souls games. I'm pretty sure it is. I thought that the tells of the attacks were too subtle. I couldn't tell, like, the sword goes up. What is going to come out? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's going to be either this move or this move. But as you keep playing them, you actually know you start seeing, like, it's weird. I wouldn't have assumed that that I would know this well. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the forward thrust. Oh, okay,
yeah,
this is the side. Okay, that is the charge where I get hit with the shield. Oh, that's the charge where I get swiped.
yeah.
But it takes way longer than other games where they're telegraphed so in an obvious way that even if you're seeing it for the first time, you know what attack is coming. Here you have to learn the association for better or worse, because this
Yeah,
is not a this is such a cool thing. This is just how it works. And not understanding that initially was a point of frustration where it
yeah.
felt like the attacks were random, and I couldn't understand why anyone would think that was fun. And then later I realized, no, the attacks are not random. They're just subtle. In
They're
some
very
cases, in some other cases, they're less subtle. But in some cases, you're like, okay, these two tells. Uh, it takes time to be able to tell them apart. Pun intended.
yes. And I think
Right.
it's unanimous. I'm happy that you brought up this point. I think like what I think in contrary to a lot of other combat design in which like the tell is designed so that you'd be able to react even if it's your first time seeing it.
Yeah.
So there is enough time between the tell and the attack for you to be able to react. Like so player reaction time is kind of measured within it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas I think in a lot of these Souls games, um, it has to become second nature. So like some of these tells you can't know from the beginning,
Mhm.
and you just have to get used to that enemy to be able to really read those tells. Which once you do makes you very powerful, both as a
Yeah.
player and also how you feel about your growth within the game. But
Yeah.
if you're first getting in and you don't see that system, it's so frustrating.
And it feels random. That's the worst part. It's frustrating, and you don't like. It took me by surprise. And I
Mm.
look for these things, and it took me by surprise. At one point, I'm like, I don't get it. How did I know they were going to do that? And I had to actually stop for a second because it becomes like instinct, right? It becomes
Yeah,
instinct. You see it and you react faster than you think it. I had to actually like pause the game, like also joke because you can't pause the game, but pause the game in my head at each tell, and take a snapshot and be like, oh, that's how I knew that this is a blocking thing and not a dodging thing, right?
yeah,
You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
how I
yeah.
knew which reaction to do. And like I said, it's for better or worse. That's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. Some
No,
people don't want to. There are different player types, different ways people enjoy games, and different ways people can get fun out of them. And some people they don't like getting over a challenge. That's not something that's appealing to them, and that's fair.
yeah,
And if you understand that this is how combat works in this game, and for a lot of people, it is. It's exactly what they're looking for.
yeah.
And I'm one of those people. I actually like getting over a challenge, except my threshold these days is low because of my time. But
Mm.
I've played hard games my whole life, and I used to love playing hard games. It's not a. It's not a. This is a lifestyle thing that changed. It's not a personality thing that changed. I no
Yeah,
longer have the time to invest and go in the lab and learn how to do these things. So my threshold for it is lower. But in general, like there are a lot of people who like getting over challenges. If the game no, this is not I'm going to pick my words carefully because it sounds like criticism at this point. It's not criticism, but if people knew going in that this is what it was, I think that would alleviate a lot of the frustration because that part is not. It's so subtle. It's not a thing that's normally explained in games at all. There's no real way to explain it either,
yeah,
and it just makes for a completely different experience than most games out there. I think I played one other game that was like this a long time ago, which was Ninja Gaiden. I don't know if you
yeah.
played
Ninja
Ninja
Gaiden, I was
Gaiden.
about to say. It's the only one I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
think
yeah.
of that's like that.
It's the only one. Yeah, and it was also a huge point of frustration before I understood the subtleties.
Yeah,
But like, it's only now that I understand why I was getting better at that game. Like,
And it's
at the
it's
time I
one of
was
those
playing it,
things that how can you explain beforehand? You kind of like you have to go through it to kind of get it.
yeah, you do.
Yeah,
But like that's the thing. Don't mash in this game. Everything has to be intentional. It's gonna be bad and feel random at the beginning. It takes a long time to start understanding it. And if you're okay with all that, it's extremely rewarding and feels really good when you're able to get over one of those challenges
yeah,
that before felt impossible.
yeah.
That's it.
I think as like over 30 hours in, I can't see myself stopping or slowing down anytime soon. Like the more I go into this game, the more I see the scope, the more I see the huge investment in details, and I am genuinely in awe of it. Like
Mm.
I don't say this about games regularly, but this game is a masterpiece, really.
Yeah, I do. I will agree with that. I don't know if I'm going to finish it simply because I'm starting to see the pattern, and I do understand that my time limit, how long I play games for, and like there's a ROI, the return on
Mm,
investment point, where I'm going to have to spend way too long to get over the hurdles, whether it be grinding or or actually getting good, as people say,
yeah.
which I don't know how long I'm gonna stay with it. It could be another 5 hours. It could be another 50.
It could
I'll
be
let you
like
know.
the more you get like get invested in the game and like you get to know it. Like I find it's one of those things with a lot of Souls games is that the more time I spend with it, the better I become at it, and the easier and hardest it become. Like it becomes harder and easier
Yeah,
at the same time.
yeah,
Um, but it's just like the amount of details that's in this game and the level design, the world design, character design.
yeah,
I'm I'm in awe. Combat design, like all of this stuff. The it's when people are saying that this is one of the best games they've ever played, I can see that. And
yeah.
if it continues on this route, it will go up there on my list as well.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Breath of the Wild is one of like it's one of those games that also took me a while to start really appreciating it.
Yeah,
Like, and I could see the same kind of pain points there. That's why everyone keeps comparing them. I know Breath of the Wild is not the first open world game, and Elden Ring is not copying
yeah.
Breath of the Wild that, but there are so many overlaps in it. Breath of the Wild also had a lot of systems I didn't like. But can we take a moment to talk about the onboarding of
Oh yeah,
Elden Ring?
let's talk about your frustrations. Actually, I'm very curious.
Yeah, because I had many. I had many, many, many. Like the, I get a lot of them. It's like they were frustrating in the moment, and that's still valid. But I get why
Hmm.
it's designed that way now when I didn't get it before. But my initial frustration is valid, and a lot of people are feeling those same frustrations. And
Yeah,
one of them is that big mounted boss at the very beginning of the
yeah.
game,
The Golden Knight.
the
Yeah,
Golden Knight. Yeah, he is literally a boss, and he's literally the second like creature that you encounter if you skip the tutorial, which you're very likely going to skip the tutorial if you're new to these games,
yeah,
which is when you're
yeah,
going to need them the most. So like that already, the whole onboarding experience at the beginning, I feel is wrong, and I still don't
yeah.
see a justification for it.
His name is
Like
the Tree Sentinel for all these Elden Rings fans that are like yelling at the podcast right now. I know what the
yeah,
actual name is, but it's
yeah,
just
the tree said,
referencing what the thing is. Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
And the funny part, Osama, is that like I think it's because I played these Souls games before. You, you
yeah,
know, I saw him as I went down that hill, and I just went nope and snuck to the left. Like I
wow,
just continued to sneak to the left and went forward. So like as I started the game, I never really battled him, and he was
wow.
actually very easy to avoid.
Yeah, he was easier to avoid once I knew to avoid him. But
Yeah,
the initial encounter was I walk up to this first thing.
yeah,
He hits me once while I'm blocking.
yeah,
Now my shield is up in the air. He hits me a second time. I'm dead.
yeah,
That and I was like, what? I was seething. I was seething. I'm like, it wasn't like a fight. He hit me once. I had a chance to run. It was literally like hit. Like I was in hit stun,
yeah,
and then I was dead, and that's it.
yeah,
I had nothing, no chance to
yeah,
do anything. I blocked the first attack. I was like, yay me! But
yeah.
no, it wasn't enough. I was meant to die if you confront him, and I
But you had
get that
nothing
now.
much to lose, though. Also
I
at
had
that
nothing
time.
to lose. I had nothing to lose except that the promise of this game, and whether intentional or not, The promise was this game that a lot of people said it was the most approachable Souls game. So I'm like, okay, the most approachable Souls game. I will approach this first thing that they're throwing at me. Nope. And in my mind, I'm like, I made a big mistake. Like in my mind, I'm like, this is not going to be any different than any other Souls experience.
So not saying that your experience is not, like your frustration that you felt, or not arguing there at all. But my question is that, didn't this kind of scare you from fighting anything bigger than you for a while?
Yes, that's why retroactively it served its purpose. Like I was like, okay, now I know that it's not the sequence of when I see things is when I have to like engage with them.
Exactly.
But then the game does this really weird thing where whenever you go to certain checkpoints, the bonfires as you call them, I think site of grace. Site of grace, yeah. Certain ones will point you in the direction of the main story.
That's right.
Which actually is the wrong way to go, because that points you to the boss, which is you're way, way too underpowered to fight. So it's almost like the game is pulling you towards where you shouldn't go. At the same time as telling you shouldn't go there with other mechanics. It's almost like an identity crisis there. Like, what am I going to do? This mixed message is what I meant to say. What am I going to do? Am I going to follow your really quickly I learned if it points you this way, go elsewhere. But that wasn't helpful because elsewhere there were so many choices. So I'm like, go to random places, you'll figure it out. Yeah. And I had a point where I was like really early on where I was literally not attacking anything. I was an observer. I was hiding. I was like, you know what? This is how I'm going to play this game. I'm just going to walk around, see as much of the area as I can until I have to fight, and then I'm going to quit. And it's going to join the shelf of unplayed Souls games like all the others, because I was like, I'm loving the world. I love the designs of the characters, but I'm tired of dying. And it's not just like people say, well, you have nothing to lose when you die. You gain things from the game that you die, but the things that you gain are subtle. You gain knowledge and you gain the experience, and like not the experience points, but in the sense of the experience of how you died, so that you don't repeat it. But the things that you lose are valuable. You lose time, so at the time you feel it right away. The experience, you don't feel it. It's super subtle, and that's why I think one of the pain points is, like, I fought the first boss. When I fought the first boss, my only intention was to see how much damage I could do to the first boss. Because the first time I tried the Tree Sentinel again, because this time I wanted to actually hit him and see how much damage. Like if I hit him and a third of his life went away, I'm like, okay, good. If I get 3 good dodges, I hit him 3 times, he'll die. I could do that. I hit him and it took off a sliver of health. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna fight him. So I engage with enemies to see not only what their attack patterns are, but how much damage I could do to them to assess my level of frustration if I try to beat them.
That's true.
And see if it's worth it. And that's a thing I don't normally do in games, period, right? Like, the games are not set up that way. Usually, if you have a chance, anything you counter, you have a chance to take them down. Here, it's like there's literally moments where, unless you're one of the best players in the world and you have the perfect timing and you're experienced in Souls games, so you can read the tells in advance and not learn them, you cannot. You just cannot. There's no way that you can do it.
That's true.
So I almost fell off several times. And what stopped me from falling off, and I was frustrated because, like, I want to like this game. Other people were playing it with the intent to prove themselves right. Like, I noticed this. They're like, well, it's exactly how it worked out. And even though that was initially my reaction, that wasn't my intention. I really, really wanted to like it. So I kept going back. I'd take a break for a day or two, and then I'd play it again. I'd be like, no, let me approach it differently now with what I know. And at one point, I was super, super frustrated because it just felt like surprise death was like, at one point, freaking wolves rained from the sky surrounding me and got me in hit stun, and I died before I realized what was happening. I heard a howl, and now all of a sudden I'm dead. And it was like, I didn't understand what the lesson was in that. Like, was it don't go here? Because, I mean, I did nothing. I just walked under a bridge. That's all it was. I guess it's look up. I don't know what it was, but at the time I was too angry to at the sudden death to actually stop and think about it.
Yeah.
And when I stopped playing at that point, a lot of people generously, including yourself, offered to teach me the game.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, but I mean, I don't see how that would help, but okay, let's give it a shot.
Mhm.
And one of my friends, Jake, he was online and he poked me. He's like, okay, let's do this. I said, okay. We jumped in, and it cemented two things. One,
Mhm.
that this game's philosophy is very different than most other games I've ever played. Period. Uh, there is something about games that are designed where they want to they want to be holistic, right?
Mhm.
Everything is included in the game. This is not it. This is not that. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that you cannot on your own know at the beginning, and the game doesn't tell you, or that it's so obscure and obfuscated that even if it's there, you can't find it. And this was my experience when he finally told me how to do a whole bunch of things that I feel normally the games do by themselves. I didn't like even getting him in my game was confusing because
Understand.
I saw those statues that you're
Mhm.
supposed to activate so that people can join your game. So he's like, okay, so go to about this area, and then you could I'll join you. So I walked up to the statue and I activated it. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. He's like, no, you need an item and it's a consumable and you have to craft it in this way, and
Yeah.
then and then you have to go in this menu and set a password, otherwise people will invade and do all these different things. Like, what? How was I supposed to know any of that? How was I
Mhm.
supposed to guess it? Even getting help is confusing. Like, I understand that you want an onboarding that's like tough as nails because it's part of what you want the game to be, but I still feel like there's no game above criticism. I have a lot of love for Breath of the Wild. I keep using it as an exception. Sorry, as an example, because I have
Mhm.
so much love for it. But there's so many things about the game I just don't like, and I think they're bad design decisions because they're not explained properly, and they feel like a weapon when you see a weapon made of steel, there's an affordance for what it could do, how many
Mhm.
hits it would take before it breaks, and that breaks that. So this is similar, where there's a lot of things where games do it this way. If you're not going to do it this way, then you have to have a very specific intention as to why you're not doing it this way. And if that intention is not clear to me, and in many cases it's not, then I think that's a mistake. It's one or the other. Either you're intentionally making it different because you have a purpose. What is the purpose of making multiplayer hard to initiate? I don't understand. Why would I I would love someone to explain to me. There might be one. I would love someone to explain me why I need to read a guide to understand how to initiate multiplayer. That I don't get it.
I think
And there are
that's
a lot of
fair.
They've been going at it for 48 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's just been Elden Ring. Like, okay, it's cool. It's cool. I love that they love the game this much. It reminds me of how much I love Destiny. Did you know it's Ramadan in 2 weeks? Like, it's almost there. Did you know that's the thing? We need to start planning some stuff for that. It's a big thing. I know. Am I gonna cook every day again? I liked cooking every day in the first Corona year. I don't think I'm gonna do Animal Crossing again. I did Animal Crossing Sahurs like 2 years ago. Those were really fun. But it also made me really sad that Nintendo just didn't build that into Animal Crossing. That somebody had to go do it. I don't know. Been a pretty good week. Been a pretty good. I had a good week. It's a busy week, but it's a good week. And yeah, I don't know. I've just been doing some upkeep on Destiny. I haven't really had much time to play other games. I've been very busy with some interesting work projects, and that's been nice. It's been good. The flying is going really well. I don't know if I mentioned earlier during the edit. I've been focused on the edit, but last lesson we actually did forced simulated landings, where you take the airplane and your instructor basically turns off the engine unexpectedly and just sets it to idle, and then you have to do a low pass over the ground in a place where you could have safely landed. And it's just to make sure that you get that muscle memory so that if it happens in the real world, you don't do anything that jeopardizes the plane. Anyway, that was really fun. Yeah, I've started recording them in 360-degree video with my GoPro Max, and it means that I can now watch them back in my VR goggles, and that is wild, super cool. It really gives you that sense of skill. So that's been good. The workflow for working with 360 video is still really bad on computer though, so that's not great. Doing a big cleanup of my apartment. That's been interesting. You know, you come across a lot of stuff from previous lives or previous periods of your life, and it's you have to reckon with those and deal with those, and move on from those. So it's been a little difficult, but I think the cleaning is really good. Just it was time to do. I don't know. Do you all love doing like a proper deep clean of your place? I do. I don't do it often enough, but I really love doing it. Anyway, I just thought I'd inject any content that isn't Elden Ring for a bit, and I'm just gonna pass it back to see how many more minutes of Elden Ring they have. I'm sitting here with my bottle of Fanta and just a little snack, and let's just keep going. Let's see how this continues.
Yeah, there are a lot of things like that where I didn't understand what this consumable did. I didn't understand how to do this in the menus. I didn't there's a lot of things that are not explained that would make the experience much easier. And people keep saying, well, the game's all about friction and this adds friction. There's good friction and there's bad friction. I just opened the menu quickly to glance at a thing to know which direction I went, and now I can't remember how to close the menu in a second, and that's just annoying. That's not Far Cry 2 where you hold the map up and while you're driving, and then it's like either you're seeing the road or you're seeing the map. That's intentional, right? This is
Yeah.
you have to like open it quickly and take a look, because the experience there is you have one of it's a toggle between these two things. You're either seeing the road or you're seeing the other set of information. You can't have both information at the same time, and that makes for a more dangerous experience. Like if you're running away from someone, or if you have to get somewhere really quickly, and like using the map is not a shortcut to that. It's a choice. This felt different. Like I bring up the map, and I want to take it away. I should be able to do it intuitively. And people will defend it. Oh, it adds friction. No, that is a UI mistake. If people keep pressing the wrong button, that's why we do playtests. We do playtests so you avoid like people accidentally doing the wrong thing. If you add friction because whenever you open the map, it stays for 3 seconds before the animation of unfolding it, and therefore you have to be intentional in when you open the map, like you said about like the heart attack and how when you do the heart attack, it's not cancelable. Then whether people like it or not, that I could agree is intentional. But if you're if you're bringing up the map and accidentally pressing the wrong button each time, that's a UX mistake. Let's be clear. It adds friction, not in a good way.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that I really feel are peppered everywhere, are like sprinkled everywhere in the game, where it's like, no, the game has, I'm sorry, I've been talking a long monologue. I'm going to leave you to comment. I'm sorry. It's just the highs are so high, Fozy. The good is so good, and the bad just is not needed. It's just not there. I'm totally for having a game that's not for everyone. I actually believe that's the right way to make a game. Make a game for a target audience, make them like it. That's totally okay. I'm not talking about accessibility feature. I'm talking about the types of fun that people have and where it pulls. If the combat in the game is intended to be a certain way, go for it. Just make it for the people who like that kind of combat. I'm not for people making excuses for the mistakes of a game that are not intentional and don't actually add for it. I think that no game is above critique, and that's the cap.
I can see why you're passionate about this. I think it's part of it is the criticism for the game, but I think you're probably more passionate about this because of the discourse over the criticism for the game. It feels like this is a game that you're not allowed to criticize in any way. And I've seen over Twitter if somebody has something to say about the game's UX.
I mean, they're talking about me here, I think. Don't criticize Elden Ring on Twitter.com. It goes really poorly. Anyway, sorry. I'm just back real quick. Did they really just fill 50 minutes with Elden Ring? I think they just really filled 50 minutes with Elden Ring. And they say I talk about Destiny too much. I don't talk about Destiny for 50 minutes for one episode. This is intense. I mean, it's a pretty good discussion. Let's be honest, but like, wow, Osama Fauzi, touch some grass instead of grace. Come on, wow. Anyway, back to it.
People, especially fans of the game, went over to to character assassinate or to make fun of people's experiences or to harass other people. And we've said that so many times on this podcast. There's no excuse for harassment ever, and there's no excuse for bad treatment of people because they disagree with your opinion or because they don't like something you like. That's just immature, generally.
Yeah.
But so a friend of mine once said, "The highest criticism is the highest form of flattery." And I really like that. When it comes to like the game design, criticism is the highest form of flattery. If they just say that it's bad and then we don't talk about it, but like if you do criticism in a constructive way or like just like a precise way of like, I don't think this is working because of these reasons, I think that is very valuable for somebody that is doing any kind of design work so that they can integrate it into their design or to have that discussion or to try something out. But yeah, to use criticism in a way that is offensive, that is the part that I completely disagree with, and that's part of the discourse that I did not like at all.
You hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. It's exactly that. Like I don't think any game should be above criticism at all, and I don't waste time criticizing games that I don't think have value. Like everything have value. I mean, it's relative, but I mean, I don't waste time to criticize a game that has too many flaws or that I just don't consider good. Subjective, not objective.
Yeah.
And when I do take the time to criticize a game, it's because I find value in it, because I think there's so many good things about it. Like, what's the point of what's the expression? Kicking a dead horse? What's the point of doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like, think of it like more. It's a horse show, and you're looking at the best horses in the world, and then you're trying to find flaws in them. I hate that example. I don't like that example. I'll take it back. Forget I said that. Forget. You don't need to explain. You explained it well enough.
I understand completely your point of view, and I think like a lot of the UX criticism of the game is legit. Like you said, if people are opening the map with one button, closing it with the other, it's making them hit the wrong button every single time. There's something there. If it's gonna take you to go on the internet to understand how to equip a fire arrow to use with your bow, and you can't find that anywhere in the game, that there's obviously something to do there. If the tutorial would require you to throw yourself in a hole as you're just starting to play the game, and if you completely miss that part of the game, then you're thrown into the open world without understanding how things work. It's also like bizarre. For me, it feels like that the people that know these games should have thrown themselves in the hole, and the newbies should have just like kept on moving forward. It should have been in reverse. So it feels more like a troll than a deliberate design call in some way. It's almost like they're taunting the player, which is not a good feeling if you're coming in new. So I think that there's a lot of criticism, and the criticism is legit. But I think also the criticism is noticeable in a game like this because it is a masterpiece and a masterclass in a lot of design. Just because it's so good, that these bad things that I understand a lot of the people that really love the game are willing to overlook, because of course it doesn't stop them from enjoying the experience. But because it doesn't stop you from enjoying the experience, and because the game is so good, these things stand out even more. It's kind of like when you have a pristine white wall and you have this one smudge, one tiny smudge on the wall, you will instantly see it,
Yeah. But if you had a wall that was just garbage all over it, you're just gonna move on. You're not gonna start talking about all the little, smudges.
Exactly.
And stains.
You're not gonna notice that little dot on the wall if the wall was garbage. But if it's like a pristine wall and there's a smudge on it, then that smudge will draw attention, and I think that's totally fair. And I think it's worth having a discussion about, so that the developers, other designers, also anybody that's engaged in this conversation can go forward and help out, even as content creators, for example. they can take note of the thing that is frustrating most people and then create content that help them through it. Like everybody
agree.
can learn from this discourse. Nobody would learn from harassment. The only thing that people are taking out of harassment, which is very sad for me, is that it is silencing voices.
Yeah.
And for game devs especially, like it's creating a very hostile environment in which like you can't engage, you can't talk about your own work, you can't talk about anyone else's work then.
Yeah.
But this field that I decided to dedicate my life to work and create, and I can't even discuss with my colleagues and peers about. Like the only way I can do this without fearing consequences is to create an account with 2 followers and put a random anime profile picture and just say this is my work. I think we should be better than this, and I think we should definitely create the environment for us to be able to talk about these things normally.
Absolutely. So, for the record, I like your wall example way better than my horse one. I think it works way better. The second point I'd like to say is that there are a lot of games that basically designers play games. They get inspired by games, and whenever a game is really good, they try to understand what is good about it and to replicate that. And part of that process is having discourse, is having conversations with other designers, so they could because sometimes you just get it, and sometimes you don't get it, but someone else can help you get it. That's just normal. This is how human beings work and communication works. And if you silence us, then what's probably going to happen is that people who are trying to replicate it, they might draw the wrong examples from it. They might understand the wrong things. Like an example that we even use on this podcast. What was the game that Ubisoft made that looked like Breath of the Wild?
Immortals
Rising. Phoenix. That's the one. So I enjoyed that game. I thought it was really good. Narratively, it was really cool. There was no feeling of Breath of the Wild. Mechanics of Breath of the Wild were very similar. You could climb walls, and you could glide across the open world, and there had a lot of mechanics like it. But the open, there was one part that was missed, and I'm not pointing fingers at any specific individual. That's not how it works. I know this is a collaboration between a lot of different people, and I don't know what the intention behind the game is. But one of the feelings that I had from Breath of the Wild comes from having scarcity of enemies. There's huge open fields of nothing, so that when you encounter something, it feels special. And I found the one main criticism I had about Immortals, even though I finished it and I really enjoyed it, the main thing criticism I had is that there was too much. There were enemies everywhere. You couldn't take 3 steps without encountering a thing. And so encountering a thing, even that was unique and set up in an interesting way, felt less special. It was like noise that was bizarre. And that's a thing that I mean, that's a kind of thing that needs conversation so other people could realize it. Because other people might play it, and if some people will just come to them like right away and say, I don't know, it just doesn't feel different. You hear that a lot. I don't know why, but. And then someone else can make it clear for you. If we don't have a safe space where we could have these conversations, many games will repeat the same mistakes, and they're not gonna find the good part and improve on the formula. And that's gonna be bad for everyone. To silence people, it's gonna be bad for everyone. Anyway, is there anything else? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in Elden Ring before? Because we have a few email, maybe too many to fit for the rest of this podcast.
Wow, they did it. They did it. Finally. They're done with Elden Ring. No more Elden Ring. I'm done. Let's get to emails. Let's hear what's up.
There were a couple specifically related to Elden Ring.
I swear to God.
Let's read those then. Then maybe we can cover more Elden. Let's cover all the Elden Ring stuff before Ronnie
These guys can never complain again.
Emails without Elden Ring.
Can never complain again about Destiny.
Yeah. Send us emails. And for those who are listening, you can send us emails at emails@thehabibis.com so that Osama can read them on the air, and then we'd love to hear from everybody around their questions. And it seems like a lot of people are also playing Elden Ring. So what do they have in mind?
So, and the other emails that were not on this topic, we'll read them in a future episode. We'll catch up. One day I'll go through my email, I'll find all the older ones, and we'll go over those. So this is an email by Chance, and he says, I'm writing in for the second time to ask a game design question that I would love to hear your perspective on. With Elden Ring being released recently, some people have bounced off of it due to its difficulty and among other things. Does a game have to be difficult to be fun? If it
Mhm.
is difficult, how do you balance difficulty with fairness? If a game is easy, how do you make that engaging? I'm sure these are common questions in game dev, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Keep up the good work. Thank you. We will.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack here. So, like, as we've discussed from a design point of view about this game over this podcast, is that while the game is difficult in some ways, I think a lot of what makes it difficult is that it approaches player expectations from a unexpected angle. And as the players adjust their understanding of what this game is expecting them to do, makes it appear to be more difficult than it is. The example there is that Osama trying to fight a boss that is way over his level. In any other game, it will clearly tell you that this is way over your level and you just steer clear. Whereas in this game, it doesn't, and then you go in and it will kill you, and then you go like, "Oh, this game is too crucial." Or like in most games, you should be able, it will allow you to wander into the area, and then enemies will either you'll see them coming, or you'll have enough time to react if they see them coming. In this games, the game will quickly teach you that you can't just wander in anywhere because you get jumped. So you start to sneak in, watch everywhere, assume that there's a trap at every angle. And I think once you start to learn all of these things, and then you learn how to level up, and then you learn how to level up to be in accordance to the enemy, and you learn how to not mash but be more deliberate. Once you reverse your expectations of what you've learned from other games and learn how this game expects you to act, I think it's not that difficult. So, like, for a lot of the players that said you need to get good, I disagree with that. They're not like, way more skilled than a lot of other players. And I still like probably say that a lot of the get good players would not stand a chance against a really skilled fighting game player.
Agreed.
But it's just those players just manage to understand what the game is expecting them to do. And
Or
once
they
you
just
get
spent enough time to be able to get there. While others
exactly,
didn't.
and I think that's ultimately what it is. But that's maybe not the answer directly to the question. But it's a point I wanted to make about Elden Ring difficulties, because people often associate Souls games with difficulty, but it's not that it's difficult. It's just that you go in with the different expectations almost all the time, and the game punishes you until you learn its way.
Yeah,
So to
and I
say.
think the punishing part, though, you use the word punishing, and I think that's one thing that makes Elden Ring very, very different than other games. And other games, if you get knocked down on the ground, basically the enemies stop attacking you. They give you a chance to get up. Elden Ring they'll hit you again and again if it connects, because it's all like about if their attack
It's a
connects, they
system.
can still miss.
Yeah.
It's a system that's in place that there's no there are no limits to what is possible to happen to you in terms of punishment, because that fits with the intention behind the game, which is we want to be brutal and we want to teach you to do things intentionally and the right way. So not every game approaches it the same way. Talking more generally, there is a connection between fun and difficulty, but it's not a one-to-one. If you read about the flow theory says that if you want to get in the flow, then there are a certain set of criteria that the activity that you're doing have to meet.
It's the sweet spot of difficulty, basically, what you need to arrive at the flow. It's not too hard, not too easy.
Exactly. If it's too easy, you'll be bored. If it's too hard, it'll be frustrating. And you have to find that mid spot. The thing is, that doesn't account for so many. I mean, it does account for it, but I mean, in a game, people have different skill levels. They have different knowledge that they come with. All of that affects this middle path. So the middle path is not the same for everyone, and that's why most designers, they do playtesting to find that bell curve. If the majority of people can find flow, then that's great. That means the game, most people will not find it boring or difficult. The difference is, the one thing to note is flow is not fun. There is a correlation between those two things, but they're not the same thing. You can have activities that have nothing to do with fun and get in the flow in them. Like, for example, accountants can get into the flow doing their work if there's a time limit and if the outcome is uncertain, these are all like criteria of being in the flow. You can get in a flow doing an activity repeatedly that requires you to be alert and understand the like intentional about your actions, but that's not necessarily fun. However, they're still getting the flow. So flows is this other concept that in games can be related to fun, but there are other ways to get in flow. And the main the main goal of a designer in a game isn't always fun. It's actually just the overall experience, and that could like if you notice a lot of things that we're loving about Elden Ring isn't fun. It's the feeling of discovery. It's seeing a beautiful vista. It's to be rewarded by things. All of these could be related, but they're not fun. Fun is this other intangible thing. So it's impossible to answer the question directly, in my opinion, because there's so many different flow states. Difficulty is just one factor of it. It's only related in most cases in combat. The game has so much more to it than just that. There's other reasons to enjoy games. There are different player types. Some don't like the challenge. Others actually that's the main thing. And in an open world game with a lot of systems and a lot of mechanics and a lot of things working at the same time, different people can enjoy the same thing for different reasons. Like it's just a huge topic. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if that doesn't
And
help, but
I think like what we need to do as designers is try to get as much information to give us an indicator that we are closer to that flow or not. And then like so that will be by playtesting, getting all the data that we can, and our own intuition and the intuition of our colleagues and people, or like past experience from making games in the same series or similar kinds of games. And then we combine all of that to get us an indicator of this is probably the right level of sweet spot that we want to land in. And even still, sometimes we get that wrong. We get that, as close to right as possible, though, and that's basically what we need to achieve. But this is also why you see in live games, like if you play MOBAs or like fighting games or something like that, there are constant patches, and occasionally a patch comes out, and then it seemingly changes the meta of the entire game, or like one character becomes obsolete or more useful or something like that. These are all like the act of balance in a video game, whether it's difficulty balance or any other kind of balance. It's the mixture of informed and intuitiveness from the design perspective, and then trying to marry both into creating that optimum player experience. And as Osama said, the act of balance is not necessarily only difficulty or like trying to find the number of retries before you beat an enemy or something like that. It could be the balance between exploration and combat. It could be the balance between the number of combat or encounters that you need to have. It could be the balance of character speed compared to the horse speed. So in a video game, there's so many systems and acts at play. And making sure that all of these dynamics and mechanics in balance is what make a video game enjoyable. And I think as we're giving these examples, I hope that's giving a lot of people an insight into how easy it is for one number to screw a lot of things up, and how much plate spinning designers and developers are usually doing, especially for massive games such as these. So it's a long-winded answer, but if you're hoping for a silver bullet of like, yeah, I'll just use this Excel sheet of 4 different numbers, then we probably disappointed you. But I think how you think and approach is basically the compass that all designers use, is that we have a methodology, way of thinking, and then we apply that into balancing or any other act like that.
Absolutely. So well done. Well said. Well put. But yeah, okay, so let's move on to the other question because
I have been editing this 1 hour and 10 minutes for the past 45 minutes, and I've literally only heard about Elden Ring. Please, anything.
We don't have that much time.
One more before we wrap this up.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. So we have another question by Susan, our I don't know, I don't want to speak for all of us, but my favorite person who writes it. She writes in a lot and I like her questions. So Susan asks, I'm wondering, do you think that games coming out today are legitimately easier for the majority of their player base because they started out playing more complex video games so much younger? For example, I was 21 when the first Dark Souls came out.
Oh my God.
But I had started playing at age 13 my neural pathways and fine motor skills would be categorically different than they are now. We see this phenomenon with esports players and their reaction times. How is it affecting game design in general? Very good question.
Yeah, I swear to God, you guys, if you bring this back to Elden Ring again, I swear.
Very good question. I think there's two parts of this question though. There's the part one: are games getting easier? And then the other part is that are gamers getting better because they're playing a lot more games, right? So I think for the first part, I don't think games are getting easier. I think developers are getting more focused on or better at onboarding players into their games. And I think we now know, back in the day, the game would come out and a developer would not know anything about how players are playing the game, other than the letters they would get in the mail, almost literally. But now they can at least know how many people are actually finishing the game. They can see how many people are creating content for the game. There's so many ways for a developer to see how players are interacting with the game. So we've gotten a lot better at fine-tuning our experiences so that players could finish it. Like the original Ninja Gaiden, I bet no one finished that game. Like I never finished that when I was a kid, that's for sure. On the NES, that thing was a nightmare.
I came far. I went far, but I did not finish it, and I played that to death. There were back then, a lot of games were difficult, and I think I have a theory. I don't know if this is valid, but I have a theory. It's because those games came on the on the backs from arcade games, and arcade games were intentionally designed with a very steep difficulty curve.
That's true.
Intentionally, because basically they want you to put your first quarter and play for a significant amount of time, so you become invested. But then with each quarter that you put in after that, it has to be a shorter and shorter and shorter period of time, so that they make more money. That was exactly the monetization. If you play like a lot of the beat 'em ups, like the Ninja Turtle TMNT games or the Simpsons games, if you play them on emulator now, and you'll see how far you get with those initial quarters, and then how long. Like there's no progression system giving you a lot abilities to be able to tackle this. It was designed intentionally to be profitable. So many people who have like very fond memories of arcade games, the majority of them, I would guess, never saw the end content. They only see the beginning, and they spend about $5 or whatever their threshold was, and then they'd walk away. And I feel like the first SNES games, that era, right, the NES and SNES games, were very difficult because people who played in arcades expected that level of difficulty. So I think there's a one-to-one there. And once the console market became bigger than arcade market, we started seeing continues going away, and other like mechanics that came directly from the arcades go away, and difficulties level out with progression systems allowing you to finish a game, because now people were spending money on the cartridge, and they expected to be able to make it to the end. So the player expectations were very, very different. So that's answering to one side of the question from my side. The other side, now I am 42, almost 43 years old, and I've played many Dark Souls games, or Souls games. I should call them just Souls games. I've never gotten it, and I think I'm starting to get it now with Elden Ring. And I'm seeing a lot of people say, "Oh, now that I'm playing Elden Ring, I feel like I should go back and try those Souls games again," because they intuited that they've learned something valuable that they could take back into those games. So age is not the only factor, but just understanding like the intentions of a game, or the setups of a game, or the systems and how they come into play, is enough. Like I'm a little too old to create too many neural pathways now that will help me in terms of my motor skills. Actually, it's all downhill once you hit like 23, I think, in terms of your reaction speeds,
the reflexes and all of that. So like when she mentioned esports, the age is definitely a determining factor in reflex speeds and some of these stuff. Though like there were like Dota, like I think Dota maybe is a special case because it doesn't require as fast APM as some of the other like mouse and keyboard based games, but still like it still requires a fair reaction game. But there were like Dota pros in their 30s. But they're very rare, and like you almost always see that because the reflex speed just required for these games is just is not there for the older demographics such as ourselves, Osama.
It's fine. We can still find games. We could, like, at least in Elden Ring, I could ask for help from younger players to jump in and beat the bosses for me. So it still works as soon as I figure out how to invite them in. That's the part.
Yeah, and I think there was an interesting element to her discussion, and maybe we can visit it again with Rami here, because I think the experience that his mom had, and kind of like
Yeah.
she wasn't a gamer that started learning how to use a controller and how to traverse virtual worlds using a controller before that. So this is like a huge learning hurdle that she needed to get over until she got into it. And once she got into it, she was treated right to start playing. And it's because, like, as much as we say controls are intuitive, video game controls are not intuitive in comparison to like VR controls, in which people can immediately get it.
Yeah.
Whereas video game controls require you to have a basic motor skill function of understanding how a controller works and how to move a camera using sticks and all of that stuff. So, the more you become good at learning these things, obviously this is learning that you take with you. And in some cases, unfortunately, I think, there are we developers focus on making games for the vast majority of players that are familiar with the controller, instead of dedicating enough time to get people to onboard into using controllers and stuff like that, just because it's so much work to be done in between. And I wonder if there's a way in which that there'll be, like, I don't know, a separate video game onboarding software that, like, hey, if you've never played video games before, play this. This will onboard you to everything we've known so far, and then now you can play any other video game,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's a room for something like that, because just the basic understanding of, like, left stick to move, right stick to move camera for a third-person controller, for anybody who's never played a video game, is very difficult to grasp. It takes some time to get used to,
That's the thing. It's not like, I agree with you 100%. It's not that learning it is hard. It's basically having it be a reflex that takes time. So a lot of games are like, now walk forward, and if nobody walks forward, they have a prompt that says press L to walk forward, and they'll teach you what the association, but it's the muscle memory that comes with it, the intuition.
Yeah.
That's not like, I want to move my camera now. Which one was it again? And then you start pressing everything on your controller. That you're not doing that. You're just like automatically you're moving the right stick because that's the convention, right? That takes time, and that I don't think there's any shortcut to it other than spend the time, and that's sad. It's really sad.
I agree. But we should definitely revisit this conversation with Rami's here, because I think he has a lot of interesting observations, like, watching his mom grow in gaming, and like watching her get over these hurdles and, like, catch up on those. And like almost no time at all. What, like, a lot of us spend decades learning. So I'm gonna ask him about this on our next time he's around.
Oh, they mentioned mom. Okay, I like this episode now. Well done, you guys. Sorry I wasn't around. Good work.
But I think it's time to put a doily on this one as well. I don't know what you feel, Osama.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's doil it up.
Let's doil it up. Rami, we miss you. Hopefully next time you're around so that we can have this conversation. Thank you for everybody who sent us an email. This is all for today's episode of the Habibis. Thank you all for listening. See you next week. But for the time being, set up.
Set up.
I can't believe that I skipped on an episode and they talk for 1 hour and 19 minutes about Elden Ring. Just straight up 1 hour and 19 minutes of Elden Ring, and then a 35-second fragment about my mom. I'm impressed. I have to admit, I'm impressed. You did it. You did the thing. Whew. All right, that was the edit. Thanks so much for coming along on this ridiculous edit, right? This was another episode of the Habibis. I guess Fauzi already did it, but I don't know how to end this otherwise. So this was another episode of the Habibis podcast. Tune in every Friday. Send emails to info@thehabibis.com and check us out on Discord. Yeah, I guess I'll just play the music. I'll play the music. Here we go.